Thank you, Peter. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm still allowed to say that, aren't I? Yes, I think so. Before I start, I just hope you'll all join with me in a special thanks to everyone's favourite mayor, Sadiq Khan, for not following his Belgian comrades and cancelling today. I mean, who would have thought Khan is not the worst mayor out there? It's quite remarkable. Although it is still quite early, so maybe I'm being premature with that, who knows. It's a great pleasure to be back here again for our 4th annual New Culture Forum conference. And it's a conference that we always hold on St. George's Day. I'm a historian. Legend has it that when England is in peril, we need simply strike Drake's drum in Buckland's Abbey, and the sound of the drum will bring Sir Francis back once again to save England, as he did against the Armada in 1588. Take my drum to England, hang it by the shore, strike it when your powder's running low. If the Don sight Devon, I'll quit the port of heaven and drum them up the channel as I drummed them long ago. Well, if there was ever a time to sound Drake's drum, I think we're coming pretty close to it right now. But unfortunately, I would wager that there aren't many children today in school who know the legend of Drake's drum, and indeed I doubt that there are many who actually even know who Sir Francis Drake is. Firstly, because of course he is another one of our great British heroes who has been cancelled for villainy, and secondly because our children today are leaving school hugely ignorant of our island story and with very little knowledge of the country and the society that they live in. For example, did you know that the majority of British school children in this country cannot identify this gentleman as Britain's leader in World War II? In fact, a quarter of children believe Churchill is a fictional character like Sherlock Holmes. So with levels of knowledge so shockingly low, is it any surprise, therefore, that so many young people have fallen for the ridiculous attacks and the false accusations made against Churchill and any number of historical figures? Because ultimately, if one is ignorant of history, one is far more likely to believe fake history or biased history. And I'm afraid our ignorant children are exposed to both. They get fake history outside school and increasingly biased history in school. Consequently, I'm sure none of you are going to be surprised to find out that Britain's youngest generation is the most radically left-wing in history. By almost every measure, a majority of young people today hold views that are completely out of kilter with every other age group, and we've never seen such a disparity before. For the first time ever, more young people favour a republic than a monarchy, for example. More young people believe Britain is intolerant than believe it is tolerant, and more are ashamed of this nation and its past than are proud. In other words, love of nation has been replaced by national self-loathing. And let me give you another example. What do you actually think is the biggest issue for British youth today? You would think climate change or Brexit. Racism. Can you believe it? Even though Britain consistently ranks amongst the top 3 least racist nations in the world, just behind Sweden and Brazil, according to young people, systemic racism is Britain's #1 issue. And it's a strongly held belief which obviously has no basis in reality whatsoever. Perhaps more worryingly than that is the fact that this generation that prides itself on its tolerance and liberalism is in fact, of course, the most intolerant and illiberal. For example, young people today believe protecting free speech is less important than stopping hate speech. And of course, as you can see in Scotland and in Ireland, hate speech is defined so broadly and so loosely that it would cover the conversations of the majority of this public, definitely some of the speeches up here today, I would imagine. And of course, in Scotland, criminalising speech in your own homes now sets the scene for children in the future to report on their parents to the police for hate speech. It's a dystopian scenario, terrifyingly reminiscent of the Cultural Revolution of Chairman Mao. And I can't emphasize how serious this is potentially in the future, because we're bearing witness to a revolutionary, epoch-defining almost shift in attitudes, values, beliefs, and worldview that run completely contrary to what every other generation has believed before. And if that trend continues, in 20 or 30 years' time, the overwhelming majority of the working age population of this country won't just be completely ignorant of this nation's culture and its history and its achievements, they'll actually despise this nation, or at least be ashamed of it. And the achievements and the legacy and the values of all our previous generations, of which we are the custodians, will have been purged from memory and replaced by the new artificial myths we see being created all around us. We will have landed in our own year zero. And ladies and gentlemen, there is no hyperbole in such a statement, because the framework for this dystopian society is already being constructed all around us, and you can see it everywhere, particularly in our education system. In our schools and universities, we see it in the decolonization of whiteness, of Britishness, Eurocentric syllabuses and reading lists. We're seeing it in the promotion of gender ideology, critical race theory, in the removal of much-loved books from school libraries, in the rewriting of our history by such things like inserting ethnic groups into Britain's story hundreds of years before they actually arrived here, absurdly claiming that Britain was built by immigrants. We see it in the denial of Britain's achievements, such as Britain's pivotal role in ending the Atlantic slave trade. The list goes on. And for those who lived under Chinese communist rule or behind the Iron Curtain, this will sound eerily and scarily familiar, because the communists understood that to establish control over a society required the severing of the link between a people and their past. History would be rewritten, national pride and identity erased. And that's the most effective way of undermining, demoralizing, and destabling a society. And the communists were masters of that tactic, and young minds were their principal targets. But ideological subversion doesn't require the infiltration of our schools by foreign powers. Our children have been ideologically subverted by a teaching profession that is overwhelmingly left-wing. And I'm not saying that all teachers are bad. Most teachers do a great job on a lousy salary. But the fact is today, approximately 90% of teachers vote for left-wing parties. And that's a world away from when we were at school, when there was much more of an equal balance, if not a slight leaning towards the right. Children absorb their teachers' beliefs and views and attitudes as if by osmosis. So it's no surprise, therefore, that at the next general election, only 7% of 18 to 24-year-olds have said that they're going to vote for the Conservative or a right-wing party. The rise of left-wing youth mirrors the rise of left-wing teachers and the teaching establishment. And we have seen plenty of evidence of some teachers increasingly bringing their politics into the classroom. Children have reported being taught that Britain is structurally racist, hearing about patriarchy, or being encouraged to self-identify as trans without their parents' knowledge. And the significance of this left-wing indoctrination in our schools can't be overestimated. At the next election, millennials and Gen Z will cast more votes than baby boomers for the first time. Meanwhile, conservative voters are dying at a rate of 2% per year. Thousands of right-wing voters die each and every day, and they are clearly not being replenished. As a result, the votes of this young left-wing demographic will soon become crucial to British politics. Now, some might say, oh yes, but once they get older, kids always become more right-wing gradually with age. And they'll quote the old adage, if you're not a liberal at 25, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative at 35, you'll have no brain. And that did indeed stand true for many generations, but no longer. For the first time since such records began, British youth, indeed British people under 35, aren't becoming more conservative as they age. So what's the solution? Well, only radical reform of our education system can ensure that the youth of today and tomorrow receive a genuinely balanced education that's neither left-wing nor right-wing, but one that is founded upon fact and objective truth, and which is free from bias, from nihilism, and harmful ideology. Because make no mistake, we have no hope of winning the war on woke if we do not first win the battle for young minds. And when I say young minds, I'm talking about primary and secondary school level, because far too often the focus is always on universities. But the battle for young minds must start much earlier in a child's life to have true success. Just remember Aristotle's oft-quoted adage, "Give me a child of 7 and I will show you the man." Once they're at university, it's already too late. As I like to say, if the hair is blue, there's nothing you can do. Now, I probably need an hour to go through all of the reform policies that we need to do to dismantle the left's stranglehold over education. So I just give you a few key points here. But if you can get a hold of our new book, State of Emergency, I do detail things in much greater detail in my chapter there. But first of all, it's important to change the ethos in schools. Schools must be legally obliged to abide by certain core principles. These being, firstly, that no compelled speech, thought, or belief must be taught. Children must be taught how to think, not what to think. Related to that somewhat, the promotion of contested ideology must be banned, so no critical race theory or gender ideology being discussed in school unless it is in a comparative situation, perhaps in the senior years. 3, respect for dissent, individuality and nonconformity, because opposing views must be taught to be respected. And the reality is, many pupils in schools don't feel that they can speak up with a contrary viewpoint for fear of being shouted down. And quite often it's only a vocal minority that holds those contentious views, but the majority feel cowed into silence. 5, pupils from the ages of 10 to 16 should take part every year in compulsory debates in which each pupil argues from a position they would otherwise oppose. That will enable them to learn the art of respectful argument. They'll be able to handle being challenged and better appreciate the validity of opposing views, not requiring safe spaces and not thinking anyone with an opposing view is evil. 6, in secondary schools, pupils must be taught the dangers arising from the loss of fundamental freedoms, such as free speech. This should be taught with examples from history and literature, including, for example, Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago. And except in rare cases, third-party providers will no longer be permitted to provide classes or teaching materials to schools, because they're... because there have been far too many examples of outside organizations providing inappropriate instruction, to put it mildly, to children without the knowledge or consent of parents, and parents are being denied the opportunity even to see these materials due to alleged intellectual property. In this digital era, of course, the Department of Education should quite easily be able to have on its own main websites, thousands of course sheets on every subject imaginable for any school to just go to and download. There's no excuse in the age of the internet not to have those materials on a government website. No staff member may promote active politicians, political parties, or other controversial bodies or organizations like Black Lives Matter. White privilege, white supremacy, white fragility, these are racist terms, and anyone found using them in an educational setting, be it on school property or online, must face disciplinary proceedings. And the same goes for things like patriarchy and toxic masculinity. No school should be permitted to decolonize its syllabuses, library collections, and so forth. And then we go on and on. So having changed the ethos of schools, it's then necessary to create a curriculum that unapologetically celebrates the genius and achievements of British and Western civilization. Not as propaganda or in a jingoistic way, but simply as fact. Chief amongst these reforms must be the teaching of history, for arguably no subject is of greater importance in the battle for the hearts and minds of our youth. A traditional history education is the best means of instilling a sense of pride, of belonging, and of place and identity in the young. It endows pupils with the knowledge to understand our nation and value our culture, our institutions, and our society. You simply cannot be an informed and engaged citizen of today if you don't understand how the world around you came to be. Most importantly, a proper grounding in history makes it less likely that people will believe spurious and corrosive claims about Britain's past, because they'll be equipped with the knowledge to identify fake history and identify bad actors. Now, shamefully, whilst history in most European countries continues to the age of around 15 or 16, in this country, you can stop learning it at 14. And to teach a child the broad sweep of British and European history in such a short period of time is simply impossible. And it's made even more difficult because the national curriculum also requires children to learn about non-European cultures. And so alongside British history, our children will be taught about 10th century Islamic civilizations, Mayan civilization, the West African Kingdom of Benin. And to do that within such a short period of time is completely unacceptable. So we at the New Culture Forum believe that history must be compulsory until the age of 16. The primary focus of the history curriculum must be on British and European history, and children must know that Britain is a product of Western civilization. No aspect of postmodernism must be allowed in a school setting. History must only be taught using traditional methods rooted in the quest for truth, objectivity, and the scientific method. And all subjects must be taught in a fair, balanced, and accurate manner, such as slavery in the British Empire. Teaching false or misleading history, or using materials that contain false, contentious, or misleading information must be prohibited. And this is one of the biggest problems of our time. You know, once trusted sources like the BBC produce things like Horrible Histories, which claims that black Africans played an active role in Britain for millennia. There was a children's book, Brilliant Black British History, that falsely claimed that black Africans built Stonehenge. And The Guardian produced material for British schools in which it claims that, you have to laugh at this stuff, don't you? I mean, The Guardian produced material for British schools in which they claim that various historical figures were black Africans when they clearly weren't. From Magna Carta to women's suffrage, the history of Britain's long journey to democracy must be taught so that pupils gain a proper understanding of the hard struggle that led to the democratic rights we enjoy today, and why we mustn't be so cavalier in getting rid of them. And the ascendancy, the rise and ascendancy of Western civilization should be a key theme of the history curriculum, because few children today are aware of the exceptional and remarkable story of the West's rise to global dominance over the past 5 centuries. Western ascendancy should be taught in a factual and balanced manner, but no effort should be made to diminish or downplay the history, achievements, and genius of our civilization, or draw comparisons with other civilizations on an equal footing. There must be a statutory requirement for pupils to be taught all of these following subjects, which I won't go through, except to say that, of course, in school, we always have children now being taught about the horrors of Nazism, but never the horrors of communism, and we must ensure that that is rectified. Black History Month and Pride History Month should be banned from classrooms and replaced with an annual British History Week. We don't want schools celebrating our differences. We must celebrate the things that unite us. During British History Week, pupils in each year would embark on different projects and celebrate great British figures, events, achievements, discoveries, and inventions. And all schools must fly a Union flag and display a portrait of the King. The national anthem should be sung at the start of each day. Now, I always get some moans when I say that, but, you know, Catherine Birbel sings Michaela's School does it every day. In Canada, it's standard practice every day. I don't see why it can't be here, because national symbols are important, and they are a way to demonstrate national identity and our shared allegiance. Now, curriculum reform is only part of the solution to our crisis, because meaningful change is impossible without an influx of conservative teachers to address education's left-wing imbalance. To attract conservatives back into the teaching profession, new routes of entry need to be established from conservative-friendly fields such as business and the military. Now, the government already has a Troops to Teachers program, which pays for soldiers to be retrained as teachers. And that program should be developed and expanded, as it will bring discipline directly into classrooms and provide pupils with authority figures who are also role models to look up to. And attracting experienced talent from the corporate world will finally allow conservatives the ability to enter the management and administrative structures of schools and departments, because hitherto the left have been far more successful than the right in gaining control of the institutional levers of power. But no attempt to break the left's stranglehold over the teaching profession can succeed without tackling the teacher training institutions. Teacher training institutions are the root cause of many of the problems outlined today in my speech. Now, it wasn't always so. When they were small independent colleges, these institutions performed relatively well. However, almost all of these colleges were closed down or taken over by universities. And today, most teachers are graduates of university education departments, or as I call them, woke madrasas. And these madrasas are indoctrinating a generation of teachers into radical left groupthink. So to stop the advance of radical progressivism in our schools, it is essential to end universities' involvement in teacher training. Instead, teachers should be offered on-the-job training, whereby teachers are trained in special training schools, much as doctors are trained in university teaching hospitals. This was first proposed by the Tories in 1992 and again in 2010, and it's a policy with huge potential. It would see the creation of national training schools across the nation run by some of the very best and most experienced head teachers in the country. Now, embarking on any of these reforms would inevitably lead to conflict with the unions. Pursuing the entire trance will be regarded as a declaration of war, but I say bring it on. It was It was said that David Cameron wanted to take on the National Union of Teachers, as Thatcher had done with the National Union of Miners. But he never did, but it's a reckoning that's long overdue. The militant unions have been the progenitors and enablers of much of the woke ideology that dominates our education system. The National Education Union has even called for the national curriculum to be decolonized. But if attempts to bring more conservatives into education are successful, unions will soon find the politics of their membership diluted. Now, parents are often overlooked, but they also have an important role to play in resisting the left's long march through education. By playing an active role in their child's school life, parents can collectively exert considerable influence over a school's direction. Any parent should have the right to remove their child from school if they object to content that is being taught or deem the manner in which it's being taught to be unacceptable. And conservative parents must also serve as school governors. School governors aren't involved in the running of a school, but they can hold head teachers to account. They can ask why schools are teaching contested ideologies. They can examine policies on gender and race and so forth that a school might wish to implement. Taken together, these reforms are perhaps our best hope of producing informed and engaged citizens of the future who appreciate the value of free speech, appreciate our history, our culture, our institutions, and our society, and appreciate the dangers posed by cancel culture. With some equilibrium restored to the teaching profession, young people will hopefully have a balanced and rounded education that enables them to think freely and critically. And liberated from radicalism, we can only hope that many of them will once again embrace liberal principles of freedom, tolerance, and free speech, spreading themselves out across the political spectrum from left all the way to right, and in so doing, ensure a more balanced and stable and indeed hopeful future for us all. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, fantastic speech there from Rafe. I think we've got just time for one question on this one. I'm sorry, sir, but this gentleman was first here. Yeah, just here. Yeah. Oh, lovely. No.
Hi, thanks. That's certainly a program I can get behind. But I'd like to ask about what the reasons why the young people today are so left-wing. And I'm sure what you say is true, that they grow up in a very, they swim in a left-wing milieu. But I think it may be a bit simplistic to say that this is all just entirely because they're just passive receivers of whatever they're taught by the system. My question is, I think a lot of young people are looking around and they're seeing, well, I can't get on the housing ladder, I'm saddled down by student debt. A lot of people can see that, they're just not having the opportunities that their parents' generation had. There's this sense that the system is rigged against young people. If we want young people to be less left-wing, is there no role for just fixing the issues that are driving them away from the Conservative Party?
Oh, absolutely, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I only have so much time to address, but I do go into that also in my chapter. I'm not saying that this is the only reason, but of course this is about education. But absolutely, young people quite rightly feel and often say, capitalism has failed us. We can't get on the housing ladder. We don't have the pension schemes that our parents had. We don't have the career security our parents had. We can't progress in life the way that our parents could. So you can fully understand why they feel let down by this conservative in name only party, which is essentially a neoliberal party posing as a traditional conservative party. Its guiding mantra is free market extremism, as far as I'm concerned, as you can see through people like Liz Truss, rather than reverting to traditional, as I would call it, high Tory values, which believe in the conservation, the clues in the name, conservatism and conservation, conserving communities, making sure that there are sufficient social networks, safety networks, and so forth. I mean, we know for a fact that the most people in this country lean to the right on social issues, but actually lean to the left on policy issues. So the SDP, for example, is quite close to that. And I've always wondered why in this country we've never created a sort of Gaullist party as you have in France, strong on defense and patriotism and the military and traditional values, but also believes very much in the welfare state and all of those sorts of things. So I absolutely agree with you. And of course, along with all of those things, you also have the long march through the other institutions. So all of our cultural institutions, our museums and our galleries, they watch television, they watch Netflix. There is a constant diet from every angle coming at them, which comes from a left-wing angle. So they are essentially in an echo chamber of not only of their own making, but indeed of all of the people that they encounter in their daily lives.
Rafe, I think that's it. Thank you so much for brilliant speech. Thanks, Rafe. Fantastic. Hello. If you're enjoying the New Culture Forum channel and you believe in our mission, may I invite you to join our membership scheme at the link below or on our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. Our work is more important now than ever, and we have great plans ahead for the future, but we can't do it without your support. From as little as £3 per month, you can help ensure that we continue on our mission. As a member, you'll receive a range of benefits, including access to exclusive content, invitations to our private events, including here at our studios, free copies of our books, and much, much more, including, of course, our famous NCF mug. If you aren't able to become a member, then please help us by clicking this button and subscribing to our channel. It's completely free. Just remember to also click the bell icon so that you can get notifications when we post new videos. Thank you.